Well, greetings in the new year from Cooperstown, New York, and welcome back to our continuing series of virtual programs from Cooperstown, side of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. We hope everybody's had a wonderful holiday, and we hope that you're gearing up for the new year of 2021. Today, we're going to start a series of new programs. We've done the virtual curator spotlights before. But today we'll start the first in a series of programs that will look at starting nines of artifacts, which we actually have done throughout the museum for each of the 30 major league teams. Today, we are going to look at a couple of artifacts for each of the teams in the American League East. Now, these are not necessarily the best artifacts. They're just some of the more intriguing ones, and ones that we think will be particularly interesting to many of our audience members. We also have a new sponsor for our programs, and we want to thank them. This virtual program, along with all of our other virtual public programs, are now made possible through the support of the Ford Motor Company, and we thank Ford Motor Company for helping us out with that. So today, a virtual curator spotlight, the starting nine must-see artifacts from your team. Tom Schieber, senior curator, joins us today. Tom, first time we've talked to you since the holiday. Did your Christmas and New Year's go as expected? Did they go well?
Yeah, they were great. How about you?
Very restful, very restful. Although you may notice a little bit of a crack in the voice. I've been struggling a little bit with that. But we'll do our best to maneuver through this. If I do completely lose my voice, I'll just expect you to completely carry the show for the remainder. But I don't think that's going to happen. I hope it does not. Tom, we're going to look at artifacts for all of the teams in the American League East: Orioles, Red Sox, Yankees, Rays, Blue Jays. We're going to do them in alphabetical order, and we're going to talk about these artifacts, all of which people can actually see in our current exhibits here at the Hall of Fame. So we're going to start with the Baltimore Orioles, a franchise that showed a little bit of a resurgence this past season in 2020. And we have artifacts from a couple of their more iconic players, both great infielders, Brooks Robinson and Cal Ripken Jr. So to kick off our starting nine artifacts for the American League East, here we have a glove from 1970. Tom, tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, this is Brooks Robinson's glove that he used during the 1970 World Series, which, it's come to be known as the Brooks Robinson World Series. There's not a lot of World Series where it's, practically named after one guy, but he really dominated that World Series. I mean, he was specifically for the glove, he had an incredible performance at third base, snaring line drives, making throws from foul territory off his back leg. He just thwarted the Reds pretty completely. But a lot of people forget that he also batted well over 400. He homered twice. He led everybody with 6 RBIs. So it wasn't too much of a surprise that he won the MVP award for the World Series. But this is the glove that he used during that incredible performance.
I think of every Reds right-hand batter for that team back in 1970. Lee May, Tony Perez, Johnny Bench. It seems like all of them were robbed on hard hit smashes somewhere in the direction of third base.
Yeah, I remember Bench specifically had at least 2 where I think the one where Brooks dives to his left on the ground and he snares the line drive, and he kind of, while he's on his belly, he holds his glove up. That was a bench liner, I think. And pretty sure he dove into foul territory to get another line drive that may have actually been heading towards foul territory, but it turned into an out. So I mean, Bench was actually, squaring it up. I mean, he was really doing well, but it went right in the wrong place. So
do we know when Brooks donated? Was this right after the World Series or later in his career?
Well, that's neat that you mentioned that, because he actually we had requested the glove from this incredible performance, and he promised the glove to us, but he said, it's still got a lot of work to do. So he said it's still using it, So he wanted to continue using it until it really became unusable. So he used it, as it turns out, throughout the entire 1971 season and World Series. And then we literally received the glove 2 days after the 71 World Series was over. That, of course, was I guess you could call it, should we call that one the Clemente series? In some sense, it's the Clemente series.
Yeah.
But 2 days after the 71 World Series, he donated it to us. So actually, this glove also was used throughout the 70 season, the 71 season and the 71 World Series. Probably was used for much of the 70 season as well. But we were able to photo match it to not just 70, which is what it was purported to be, but to 71 as well. So that's pretty cool.
Now the leather is really darkened toward the middle, the pocket of the glove, and the lower part of the fingers as well. So I'm not able to see the brand. I imagine you have seen this probably closer up than I have. Do we know if this is a Rawlings, Spalding? Who made this one?
It's a Rawlings. It is a Rawlings. What's interesting is the tag for Rawlings is on the behind the wrist, and but that tag is gone. And what I don't know is whether or not it just started getting so worn. I mean, this is a pretty well-worn glove. Did it get worn and eventually start to fall off, and he just said, "Well, I got to rip it off," or did he remove it intentionally from the get-go? And I don't have an answer for you on that.
Now, some fans might be wondering, why is it so dark in certain parts of the glove? What causes that?
Well, it could be a number of different factors. I mean, the glove can start off fairly dark, of course, and then it can get dark due to any treatments that he may have done. I'm not sure what he did to prepare his glove or to sustain it during at least 2 seasons there. So obviously, if you're using certain oils, it could darken it, or there's all sorts of different little treatments that you can do that may cause a reaction with the leather and make it darker. No, I'm not quite sure what it is.
You know, it's interesting, Tom, looking at the webbing of the glove. It doesn't look like it's that strong or fortified, but obviously it worked well for Brooks.
Right. Well, so the webbing between the thumb and the forefinger, to me, is, well, first of all, it is falling apart, and as a third baseman doing exactly what he did, that seems like it's particularly problematic because you get a hot liner that could just literally go straight through the webbing there, which is maybe a factor, a partial factor in why it was, he finally gave up with the glove. But it is surprisingly flimsy in there, and sometimes a lot of players really do like the woven webbing because that tends to mold to the ball, and yet it doesn't have an issue at all with a single strut of the leather breaking and causing a problem.
I'll tell you though, this glove brings back memories for me. I didn't have a glove exactly like this, but the style, the build, the framework of the glove, if you will, this is exactly the type of glove that I would have remembered buying back in the early 1970s.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's a professional model, which is a top of the line model, and those can be pretty expensive. But yeah, it's a very familiar looking glove. The funny thing about it is this: you take a glove like this, and you walk on the field with it today. Okay, that's a 50-year-old glove, right? Maybe a couple heads would turn from somebody walking up with that model. That's not necessarily that the age of it, but if you had an exact 1970 type model like that, maybe a couple people would notice that it's a little bit different than today, but not a whole lot. But if you go back another 50 years from 1970 to 1920, if you were to walk on the field with a 1920 style glove, everybody would just flip out and just say, "What are you doing?" So, the gloves have have changed a lot since they're first introduced in the 19th century, but they're becoming the changes are happening less and less frequently now, right? Or certainly less noticeable. So it's a totally viable glove today.
We're going to have a little bit of fun here. I'm going to try to guess where these artifacts are located. because all 10 of the artifacts we're looking at from the American League East, they're currently in exhibits here at the Baseball Hall of Fame, so people can actually come and see them. I'm going to say this has got to be an Autumn Glory up on the third floor. Is that correct?
You are correct. That's
Okay.
very, very good, Bruce. It is an Autumn Glory because such a great World Championship story. Having said that, there's great World Series artifacts in other exhibits. So just because something is in the World Series was used in a World Series doesn't necessarily mean it's only going to be in one exhibit. But you nailed it. We did decide to put it in our exhibit on postseason baseball called Autumn Glory. And by the way, not just the AL East objects, but all 270 different artifacts that we chose for our starting nine are on exhibit. So it's not like, well, you can only see half of them. The rest of them are somewhere else or on loan somewhere or whatever. They're all on exhibit. So, barring something very special happening where we had to take it off exhibit, which we try to keep to a minimum. And we'll tell you ahead of time if you come to the museum, and we'll tell you something's not on exhibit. But no, we want to make sure they're on exhibit because we want you to be able to see them.
That's a great point. These are all mainstays of the collection and artifacts that people expect to see when they come here. Let's talk about another great Orioles infielder. He spent some of his career at third base, but best known as a shortstop, best known for the streak, among other things. This is a helmet that belonged to a later player in Orioles history, Cal Ripken. The date, September 8th, 1995. That might not ring a bell with fans right off the bat, but Tom, tell us the historic event that goes along with that date.
Right, it's actually September 6th, 1995. And that's the day that Cal Ripken played in his 2,131st straight game, breaking Lou Gehrig's previously thought to be unbreakable record. And of course, he went on to play, another 500 plus games in a row. But this was from that moment that it's one of these things where you don't often. There's two kinds of great moments in baseball in general: ones that are unexpected and ones that can be semi-predicted. Like someone's. And this is a predictable one. So you don't know when someone's going to turn it on. This is a triple play. You just have to be lucky. But this is one that people targeted. They said, oh, this is going to happen. And so it's a little bit easier to be one of these situations where I know where I was when I saw this. And so a lot of people are parked in front of a TV because they know it's going to happen. And so that's part of the reason that it was elevated to the status it is. Not to demean the record itself, which was ridiculous. I mean, it's an unbelievable thing that he did. But this is a helmet he wore that game. And for those who do remember it, not only was it just historic that he played in that game, and of course, a big celebration occurred after it became an official game, but he hit a home run that day, which was actually the home run that gave the Orioles a 3-1 lead in what was eventually a 4-2 victory. So he gave them what turned out to be the margin of victory. It's back-to-back homers by, I think it was him, and I want to say it was Eddie Murray was hitting in front of him. No, it was Bobby Bonilla. So Bonilla leads off an inning with a homer to put them up 2-1, and then Ripken hits another homer to make it 3-1. But not only was Cal Ripken an incredibly great ball player and obviously a stalwart, but he also had this knack for having home runs or great moments in these important games.
Yeah.
And this was just yet another, you couldn't have scripted it much better. So it's a wonderful thing.
Three interesting features that stick out to me, and I want to get your comments on all three. We see a few scratch marks on the crown of the helmet, so well used by Ripken. Certainly, he used this for more than just that one game, no question about that. Also interesting, it looks like the bird has actually been almost pasted on. It kind of looks three-dimensional. Maybe you can enlighten us on that. I think it's also interesting, the prominent number 8 on the bill. We don't see all teams do that. In fact, if you go back to earlier years of baseball history, A lot of times you would not see the numbers on the helmet, but you do see the number here. Your thoughts on those three facets of this helmet?
Certainly used. And in general, you get your helmet's going to last a long time. It's a pretty significant piece of equipment, and it's also a very personal piece of equipment. I mean, conceivably, you could share a bat, and that's of course done all the time. And we actually show one of those later on in the talk. And there's other things that could be sort of more shareable and exchangeable, but the helmet is yours. And so definitely game worn and season long worn. As far as the Oriole on the front, yep, it's a decal. And sometimes these decals can start to flake off. Nowadays, actually, in recent years, especially last, I'd say 5 years, teams have been introducing quite noticeably three-dimensional logos on the helmet front. It's popping off, and even the caps tend to have these days a real dimensionality to it, which was never an intention, in the 90s or earlier. But there's a three-dimensionalness to them now. It's quite.
So this is a flat decal.
It's a flat decal, right? Okay. And then the number 8 for Ripken on the bill is interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's different places to identify players. So you could do that. You could also have the numbers on the back. That I've seen that a lot. I distinctly remember that the Mets in 1986, pretty good year for the Mets, and likely other years as well, but I'm familiar with the 1986 situation. They used one of those old Dymo label makers. You know these things, Bruce, where you just sort of, it's a little, almost like a plastic that you could emboss with a little machine, handheld machine, and you could put a name on it, and then there's a stickiness that you peel off the part of it, and it becomes sticky, and you could just paste it. And so Ray Knight's helmet has that from when he's waving his helmet as he's stepping on home in Game 6 of the '86 World Series. I know Gary Carter's helmet had that as well. And so they just used this little, anybody could buy these things, and that's how they identified the helmet, was they put this little label on it. So different ways to do it.
It'd be interesting if we had a photograph of Brooks Robinson's helmet, which was very strange because he actually shaved off part of the bill and then contrasted to Ripken's, which is about 20 years later. This obviously is a regular helmet. It's got nothing has been cut off or shaved in terms of the bill. You see the noticeable ear flap with also the padding. And then something I'm just picking up now on a bigger computer screen here. Look like there are 2 pieces of string coming off the bill in the front. I don't know if am I imagining that? What do you know what that is?
I just think it. Let me zoom in here on my screen a little bit.
To the right of the 8.
Right. No, I know exactly where you're looking, and right off the top of my head, I'm not sure what that is. It may be some of the textile underneath the bill that's coming off, but it also could be conceivably. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'd have to take a look, but you have eagle eyes.
Bruce, I didn't notice it before when I was getting ready for the program today, but I have a better picture on this computer, and those strings are very visible. So just curious about that, but a great artifact from such an important moment. Baseball was struggling at the time. This was, I don't want to say it was a singular event that, resuscitated the sport, but it certainly helped in a lot of ways. ESPN did a national broadcast. Chris Berman was the announcer. He was the lead man for ESPN in many ways at the time. This was really a great moment for the sport that was struggling a bit.
No, you hit the nail on the head. It really was a key moment that happened slightly later than what people thought it would happen because of the work stoppage. So there was a delay there, right?
Yeah.
And of course, everybody kind of wanted to make sure that if you looked at the schedule, that it would what turned out to be, you could look ahead and see where 2131 is going to happen. And, let's hope this is in Baltimore, right? Let's make sure it's in Baltimore, if at all possible. So, and of course you got rainouts that could affect things and stuff, but so it was really nice that it was in Baltimore. And, there's I should mention, there's two other Hall of Famers that participated in that game for the Orioles. Harold Baines was the Orioles DH at the time. And Mike Mussina was the starting and winning pitcher. And this was one of those seasons where Mike Mussina got 19 wins. This is one of the 19 wins because he was always getting just 19 wins, right? And then finally, his last season with the Yankees, he got his 20th win, and he went out on top like that. But this was one of the 19.
Very nice. Final point on this one. I really have no idea what exhibit this is in. I mean, I could see this being in Whole New Ball Game, which is baseball from 1970 to today. I guess I'd have to guess, though, it's in the, I like to call it the records room, but that's the old name. It's One for the Books up on the third floor. So that'll be my guess. One for the Books. Is that where it is?
Bruce, you are 2 for 2. It's in One for the Books. We have a case specifically talking about players' consecutive games played streak. And so we talk about Ripken, we talk about Lou Gehrig, and if I'm correct here, we talk about Kinugasa, who was the guy in Japan who had in the Nippon Professional Baseball, who had a great consecutive games played streak. So we, in One for the Books, which is about baseball records, long as this, most that, we don't talk just only about the current record holder. We talk about the history of records. So, when you say who has the most consecutive games played, the answer is Cal Ripken, but people immediately also think about Lou Gehrig. So we wanted to tell multiple stories. And then we wanted to tell some stories that people maybe didn't think about with the Kinugasa. So it's a very rich exhibit that way.
Very good. So One for the Books, third floor, you'll see the Cal Ripken helmet. All right, let's move on to our second team. And this is always a favorite. So many people love this one. I guess we call it generically the Ted Williams Strike Zone. I don't know if it has a more official name than that. But this is so colorful and also so instructive at the same time.
It is. It's a great object, but the story behind it is not really well known, and I thought I'd mention that to you. So first of all, part of the story that is fairly well known is that Ted Williams came up with this concept for the strike zone, which is basically what Ted would believe he would have hit had all balls been delivered in just this one spot. So obviously the most red ones is where he thought he could hit if balls were delivered there, he was going to hit 400. And then it works its way down from there. And obviously, as a left-handed batter, that outside, the low outside corner was not a strength for anybody, basically. And so he's going to, if he had to swing only at balls there, he was going to bat 230 or something like that. So the idea came about and was first put in, that image was first put into Sports Illustrated back in 1968. But then it got repeated on in his book that came out in 1971 with John Underwood called The Science of Hitting, a sort of a landmark, still very useful book for how to on hitting from, arguably the greatest hitter. And so that's on the cover of that, and also it's on the inside, right? But what a lot of people don't know is what is this particular object, because it is a three-dimensional representation. And this is a object that was created specifically for an episode of the Baseball Bunch from the early 1980s. You remember the Baseball Bunch?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Johnny Bench hosted it, right? And Sandy Go Chicken was a regular guest. And I think even the Kool-Aid guy you remember the giant Kool-Aid that would walk around? Kool-Aid? Right. He would show up now and then. Yeah.
And did Tommy Lasorda do a regular routine?
I think the late great Tommy Lasorda was often involved. So anyway, they had Ted Williams was going to be a guest, and so a guy named Gary Cohen, who was a writer-producer for the Baseball Bunch, was talking to another guy who worked for the Baseball Bunch and said, "Hey, I want us to do something special here. We should actually make one of these things. So he went to I guess a friend who actually found a local carpenter who made this thing, painted it up, the whole thing, and they brought it out to the field. And so when Ted Williams came on set, Ted Williams was apparently ecstatic about seeing this because he'd only seen the flat representation. He thought this was just absolutely great.
Yeah.
And so they used it for the episode, and you can watch the episode on YouTube if you want to. Then when it was over, Cohen says, "Well, now what are we going to do with this?" And his other guy who was involved said, "Well, you can just chuck it." And Gary Cohen says, "I can't throw this thing away. This is too great." And so he ended up contacting the Hall of Fame and said, "Would you guys like this?" And we said, "Yeah, this would be pretty neat." And so he donated to us, and it's been in the museum for, a really long time. It's a real fan favorite because not only is it a cool concept with all what I was talking about, but it's on exhibit, and you can stand right next to it if you want to, and get your picture taken. So it's a great photo op too.
And they're actual baseballs that have been painted different colors.
Right.
Somebody who's a calligrapher, I guess, did a beautiful job marking the decimals and the different batting averages.
Right.
And if you look at the baseballs on the left, the ones that are yellow, you see the fragmented red line. What is that about?
So let me. I've got it real small on my screen. Let me blow it up. But I believe that the line has to do with it's cutting the baseball. Obviously, the bottom half it's cutting them in half, and the side ones it's cutting in half as well. And it's such a Ted Williams thing. He was so precise. He got it down to the half size of a baseball as to what he'd be batting. When we're talking about the science of hitting, it's not just a phrase. The guy was ridiculously scientific about every little thing, and so he got down to the half diameter, we call that the radius of the baseball. That's how precise he would be in terms of what am I going to bat. So that's what's going on.
It's just visually striking. It always captures people's attention, especially if they've never seen it before. The numbers are from Ted. He came up with the numbers for each of the baseballs, but as you said, was designed by a gentleman named Gary Cohen, not to be confused with the Mets broadcaster.
Correct.
And he donated it to the Hall of Fame. It is behind glass. This is one I don't have to guess because I see this one all the time. I struggle to get up to the third floor sometimes. I should get up there more often, but I know that this is on the second floor, and this is Timeline of Baseball History, 1940s.
Correctamundo. That is correct. I have to keep score here. You're now 3 for 3.
Well, I knew that one ahead of time. That was not a guess. So
it still counts. You can study ahead. That's fine. It counts. You're doing very well.
So the Ted Williams strike zone. That's one half of our Red Sox entry. This one is, at first glance, maybe not as obvious what it is. Well, we know it's a baseball bat. It's signed by the Rooster, Rick Burlson. It's got his facsimile signature. It's his model bat. But it was used by a much different player back in 1975. Tom, tell us about this one.
Right. So this is the bat that Carlton Fisk used to hit his infamous, whatever you want to call it, 12th inning leadoff, walk-off home run in Game 6 of the 75 World Series off of Pat Darcy of the Reds. And the one that hit the foul pole, which is, I guess, now officially called the Fisk pole. Is that right? That's an official thing the Red Sox did. So, and there's so many great stories about this. First of all, the most obvious one is, why is it a Rick Burlson bat? That's the big question. And the reason is that, Fisk caught the whole game, and we're in the 12th inning, and he was tired. And so he just felt like he needed a lighter weight bat, and it was a couple ounces lighter and a little bit shorter, about half an inch shorter than what Fisk used regularly. And so he decided to borrow Burlson's 30-ounce bat to get a little better ability to control his bat swing. This is the first time he'd ever borrowed Burlson's bat, but he just felt like it was going to do a better job. Now, he hits the home run and hops off into history, and they go to a Game 7. And as you might imagine, Fisk is like, yeah, this is now my bat. I'm not asking, I'm telling, this is now my bat. The fun thing about it is, and you can't see it in this picture, I apologize for that, but if the picture was taken in the other direction where you can see the knob, you'll notice a number on the knob. That's a little strange. Normally, a lot of times players or clubhouse guys will put the player's uniform number on the knob, and when it's in the bat rack, it's very easy to see, oh, this is my bat. You see your number, and you can pull it immediately, you know it's yours. So Rick Burlson's uniform number is 7, so it's a big 7 on the knob. But after Fisk homered with it, he said, "Oh, this is now my bat," and he put a little 2 in front of the 7, so you can see it says 27, which is his number, Fisk's number. But the 2 is noticeably smaller because it's not centered right. You know, the 2 is off to the left a little bit. So that's kind of fun. But a really cool story about this evening is, and you may remember this, Bruce, is the game was supposed to happen 3 days earlier. Game 6 was supposed to happen on October 8th. Let me look it up. I want to make sure I get this right. I think it's the 18th. But they had just come back from Cincinnati. There's a day off, and then they're supposed to play. And then there was just rain, just a nor'easter in New England. And so it was delayed 3 days. So the game took place on October 22. Let me make sure I get that right. No, it took place on October 21, but it ended on October 22 because it was just after midnight when Fisk hit the 12th inning home run. But what's really amazing about it is that it's a 12-inning game, and we don't know how long it's going to go. So there was already people talking about, well, what's the record for the longest World Series game? And of course, nowadays the record was just set a couple of years ago with the Dodgers and Red Sox playing their 18-inning game. That was crazy. But at that time, the record was a 14-inning game that happened back in 1916 between actually the Red Sox and the Dodgers. And in that game, playing for the Red Sox, playing left field for the Red Sox, was a guy named Duffy Lewis, great ball player. Well, Duffy Lewis threw out the ceremonial first pitch for this Game 6. So for Game 6, they tried it out, Duffy Lewis. And Duffy Lewis had played for the 1912, 1915, 1916 champion Red Sox. He would have played for the 1918 Red Sox, but he was in the Navy all season long during World War I. So he would have been with those 4 champions, including the 1918 one, which is the last Red Sox team to win a World Series until and then there's the Curse of Bambino, supposedly, and then obviously that got changed a number of years ago. But so, here's a guy who was in 3 World Championships with the Red Sox. He coached with the Boston Braves after his career was over, and he was coaching for the Braves in 1935 when Babe Ruth had his short stint with the Boston Braves in his final season in big league baseball. So he witnessed Babe Ruth's last 6 home runs, including number 714. And then fast forward to 1975, he witnessed another legendary home run in Carlton Fisk's 12th inning walk-off. So it's amazing that Duffy Lewis touched all of this Red Sox history.
So often things go full circle in baseball. It's coincidental, but sometimes you wonder if there's a master plan behind it. Yeah. Now, Tom, I want to know who donated this, Rick Burlson or Carlton Fisk?
Actually, neither. This is a loan. And you don't have many loans in the it's not in the collection. We don't have a lot of loans in the museum, but it's awesome, and it came in as a loan from Carlton Fisk.
One other thing interesting, you see the darkened part of the bat toward the handle, the thin part, which looks like pine tar, and you can see that unlike some players, he didn't bring that pine tar, halfway up the bat. It's only maybe a third of the way up the bat, a quarter of the way up the bat. Not sure if that's Burleson pine tar or Fisk applied pine tar. I guess that may be a bit of a mystery. It's also a Hillerich and Bradsby Louisville slugger, which at the time was the major producer of major league bats. Now I need to guess where this one is, and I really don't have any idea. If I were to guess, I'm going to say whole new ball game, baseball 1970 to today. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're correct, and you are 4 for 4.
Wow.
Very good.
Wasn't sure about that one, but
Yeah.
it is in a whole new ball game.
That is correct.
And you said it's on loan. Is that open-ended, or is there a specific date when it might be returned?
Actually, I don't know that information, but hopefully Carlton will continue to loan it for as long as possible, because we really want to share this with the fans.
Yeah. Well, if Carlton tries to take it back, we should tell them that Rick Burlson said we could keep it longer.
You get to tell them that.
All right. So those two great items for the Boston Red Sox. Now we go to their rivals, the New York Yankees. And this is not something you see all the time in our museum. This came after the 1921 World Series. It is a silver crown that was given to, well, I guess a man who is known as the king of baseball. Tell us about this.
Yeah, this is a crown that was given to Babe Ruth after the 1921 season. Now, actually, it's after the 1921 World Series, which they lost. The Yankees lost to the Giants. But Babe Ruth had just completed a season where he had 59 home runs, which broke his previous record set the year before of 54 home runs, which broke the record that he set the year before that when he was playing for the Red Sox of 29 home runs. So he actually, in a span of 2 years, he doubled the record that he initially set in 1919. That's just crazy. But it's a silver crown that was presented to him, actually placed on his head by his manager, Miller Huggins. But it was actually paid for and thus given to Ruth by fans. There was they raised the money that said if you pay $6, you will help defray the costs of the crown, and each person who donated $6 to the crown to create this got a signed Babe Ruth baseball, actually. So there was a little bit of a transaction going on, but they also got the satisfaction of playing a role in baseball history in presenting with this crown, which does have 59 baseballs on it. There are at the top 9 large baseballs on the tips of the pointy parts of the crown, and then at the base of the crown, it's on a little pedestal here, but so the base of the crown itself is in the middle. There's a whole bunch of baseballs that ring around there. There's 49 baseballs there. So for those scoring at home, 9 plus 49 is 58. So the 59th baseball is the one that you see front and center underneath a little baseball bat on the actual side of the crown. So if you count them up, there's 59 baseballs for 59 home runs.
Tom, does the crown come off the pedestal, or is it one piece?
No, it does. It does come off the pedestal. So when it was placed on Ruth's head, he didn't have the pedestal there. It was put on his head, but then it came with the pedestal so it could be displayed. Oh,
so this is the same one we see in those famous pictures of him.
Yep. There's definitely pictures of him wearing this crown, and that's exactly what you're seeing.
Now, if you put the crown and pedestal together, is it very heavy?
The pedestal is actually not particularly heavy. The crown is pretty heavy, though. I don't remember what it exactly weighs, but it's got some. You don't want to walk around with the crown on.
Yeah.
For many reasons, but yes, the weight would be an issue.
And this is a silver piece, so it's really nicely done.
It is. It's a wonderful piece, and it's really cool the fans were involved.
Yeah, you wonder the expense they went to in having this created.
Yeah, so it's $6, and 100 different fans helped defray the cost. It was a $600 trophy, which is up getting close around $9,000 in today's dollars. So it was not inexpensive.
Now, in terms of where this is in the museum, this is pretty easy. I'd have to guess it's in the exhibit that is close to your heart. You were the lead curator for it. Babe Ruth, His Life and Legends, got to be up there.
Oh, this is the trick one. It was a tricky. I'm sorry, you are incorrect.
Oh, wow.
4 for 5. It is in our exhibit 1 for the books about baseball records, where we talk about the progression of the home run record, and this is how we help tell the story of the 1921 record. So nope, this is actually up in 1 for the books on the 3rd floor. But you're still batting 800. That's way better than Ted Williams. So you're doing very well. You're assured of batting 400.
Yeah, 1 for the books is an older exhibit, so I'm guessing the crown was there. Did you think at all about relocating the crown from that exhibit to Babe Ruth's room?
I thought about it for a very brief amount of time, but there's so much other wonderful Ruth things that could help tell the story in the Ruth exhibit. There just really wasn't a need, and I really did want to make sure I was able to talk about each different record set by Ruth in terms of single season home runs. Because remember, he set that record 4 times. He set the record 4 different times. Wow. So I wanted to make sure I had something, and this was the way to do that.
So this great silver Babe Ruth crown, 3rd floor, one for the books here at the museum. Then we have a more modern Yankee represented here with this beautiful pinstripe home uniform. Number 2, which kind of gives it away, belongs to a guy named Derek Jeter. But Tom will provide the context to that. This is early Derek Jeter.
It is. It's his rookie season of 96. Of course, he played a little bit in 95, but he qualified as a rookie in 96. He won the Rookie of the Year in 96, and he helped the Yankees to the World Championship in 96. And this is the jersey that he wore during home games in the 1996 World Series. And including, he had a very important run-scoring single in Game 6 off of Greg Maddux of the Braves. That was the first run scored in that series clinching game. So I guess technically he gets the game-winning RBI in that game. And 96 is a for Yankee fans a huge thing because it's the first time they had won a World Series since 1978, and that gap of years is the longest stretch of years without winning a World Series for the Yankees since their first championship in 1923. They had never gone a stretch like that, if I did my math right. So it was a and it ended their mini curse, if you want to call it that. And then of course Derek Jeter is a Hall of Fame. He earned election to the Hall of Fame last year. No induction ceremony last year, but hopefully we're going to have the induction ceremony this year.
Now, it's a Jeter model, obviously, but it's got some interesting features. The right-hand sleeve has a rather elaborate World Series patch. Right. And then the left sleeve is the black armband. Tell us the significance of the armband.
In that late that spring, in June of 96, Mel Allen passed away. And so the Yankees donned a black armband in his memory for the rest of that season. So that was why they have that armband there.
No, I was going to guess Mickey Mantle, but I guess that was 1995 that he had died.
I think that's right.
And I want to say Joe DiMaggio was maybe a couple of years later, 98.
I think DiMaggio is 98, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, now it's very common. You'll see teams with patches or numbers on the sleeves. But for many years, the Yankees simply designated a black armband, and that's what they did for Mel Allen. This is a polyester uniform. That, of course, is the material of choice, has been really ever since the Pirates made the switch back in the middle of the 1970 season. One final point on this, looks to be in just beautiful condition, at least from the back.
It is. It's excellent condition, and you have. My guess is this was used during the end of the regular season as well, but a lot of times you'll find really good condition uniforms worn for special games because sometimes new uniforms were acquired specifically for that purpose. And while they do jump around in them and they dive and everything, they still maybe only have a few games that they're going to have wear and tear, and so they tend to last longer. But at this time, the team was usually just augmenting their regular season jerseys with a patch for the World Series, not doing a whole new jersey.
All right, this is going to be a tough guess for me. My first reaction is to say it's going to be up in Autumn Glory, up on the 3rd floor, the World Series exhibit. But then I'm thinking maybe it's in inductee row for the inductees from last year or the electees from last year. I'm going to go with the latter. I think it's up 3rd floor, inductee row with Jeter, Miller, Simmons, and Baines.
Yeah, actually, it is in whole new ball game. We have different jersey of I think actually a couple of different jerseys of Derek Jeter's in his inductee case. And it certainly could have gone there. It certainly could have gone in Autumn Glory. But it's actually up at Whole New Ballgame in a section that we really talk about the core four of the Yankees. And of course, he had the longest tenure of the core four, but that is where it is right now.
All right, very nice. So, Whole New Ballgame, which is one of my favorite exhibits here at the Hall of Fame, opened up just a few years ago, and it looks at baseball over, well, now it's the last 51 years, 1970 to 2021. So those are our two Yankee artifacts. Here's a former Yankee, or a one-time Yankee, who finished his career with the Tampa Bay Rays. A little strange seeing Wade Boggs with the Rays colors. Why this jersey?
Because it's for an expansion team that started in the mid '90s, it was sort of their first real signature moment. Wade, of course, is from the Tampa area, so that was a big factor to him signing with the Rays. But it was, a big moment for a team that was out of the box, not a particularly good team. So we wanted to make sure that we had something from that 3,000th hit moment. It's a pretty cool thing because Boggs, when he got his 3,000th hit, he got it hitting a home run. He was the first player to get his 3,000th hit as a home run. It's since been accomplished by actually the guy we were just talking about, Derek Jeter, did the same thing, and Alex Rodriguez hit a home run for his 3,000th. But the first guy to do it was Wade Boggs back in August of 1999, and his 3,000th hit came one day after Tony Gwynn's 3,000th hit. So it was a little flurry. In 2 days, we had two different guys join the 3,000 hit club.
I love the colors on this. These are the old colors for the Tampa Bay franchise. And as we can see on the left-hand sleeve, their nickname was different back then.
Yeah, it was the Devil Rays, right? And so they had embraced the animal more, and now they actually still do a little bit here and there with that, but they're also now doing what you can see with the logo in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, where the ray is now can mean more than just that animal. And I love the little ray of light logo. I think it's a wonderful switch that they made. So yeah, it's a devil ray, technically a devil ray artifact.
One thing that interests me too is when you look at the nameplate, the individual letters BOGGS have not been stitched onto the uniform. They've actually been stitched onto a plate, and then the plate goes on to the jersey. That's not always done that way, but it was done this way with the Rays back in '99.
Yeah, there's different teams use different methods, and they switch out a lot. The advantage to doing this is all you have to do is remove the nameplate, and now it's a more anonymous jersey. We could put somebody else's name on it. If the letters were sewn directly on, that's a laborious process that's really not even worth the bother to try and take the letters off. Yeah. So there's a financial reason for doing that as well.
Trying to remember if the Rays retired his number 12.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't recall, but I can easily look that up for you if you want me to. But one thing, as I'm looking that up, I will tell you is a famous individual made his debut that same game, which is August 7, 99. And it was for the opponents. Now, Cleveland was playing Tampa at that time. And the starting, I think he was in center field for Cleveland. It might have been another outfield position, was a guy named Dave Roberts, who just won the World Series. Wow. So that was, and Dave, he was like 3 for 5 in this his first game. But Dave Roberts, can you imagine making your major league debut and seeing like this guy get a 3,000th home run, a 3,000th hit, on a homer? And by the way, I should mention real quickly, obviously Boggs was known as a slap hitter, and certainly while he was at Fenway hitting the ball off the wall in left field. But anybody who knows anything about Wade Boggs knows he had great power. He really did have great power. He's kind of an Ichiro type, also a guy with incredible power, but they just felt they could do more good for their team by getting on base. A real selfless act in a lot of ways. Obviously, their batting average would have gone down if they went for homers more, but they could have done it. Both of those guys had tremendous power. And the answer to your question is yes, the Rays did retire Wade Boggs' number. Yeah.
All right. Now, my other question, to which I have no answer, is where in the world is this artifact? I'm going to guess it's in your team today, which is up on the 3rd floor, and it's in the Tampa Bay Rays locker. I'm not confident on that one.
Okay, not confident. It's actually in one for the books because we do talk about a number of people who got 3,000 hits. And so we have a number of 3,000 hit artifacts in that exhibit, and this is one of them.
All right, so I'm
4 for 7.
3 in a row I've missed, but I'm not surprised. All right, we go on to another artifact from the Tampa Bay Rays franchise. Here we have a bat, and it was used by Evan Longoria back in 2011. It was the final day of the regular season, but it was an especially important at bat for Longoria and this franchise.
Right, and actually for baseball, Bruce, when you think about it, because that night has often been called, one of the greatest nights in baseball history because a couple of wild card races were settled on that one night. So you have the Cardinals making a late season charge to pass the Braves as the Braves faded to get one of the wild card slots. And so the Cardinals won that night. The Braves lost, and the Cardinals ended up topping them by 1 game in the standings in terms of the wild card position. Boston lost their final game of the season to the Orioles, and in a walk-off. At the same time, well, not exactly the same moment, but that same evening, the Rays won their 5th game in a row, and they came back from being down 7-0 in that game, if you recall, beating the Yankees, who were already assured of making the postseason. But I know that wasn't good for you, Bruce, that they lost. But nevertheless, the Rays won, and so with the Rays winning and the Red Sox losing, that combination meant the Rays got a wild card slot. And the way they lost was that Evan Longoria hit a walk-off homer, and it just barely cleared just this one little. There's a little anomaly in the left field wall where it comes a little bit lower than the rest of the left field wall, and he just snuck it over. It's just he couldn't have walked over and placed the ball any better. And it was just one of the most amazing, dramatic nights, and where everything comes together. Obviously, if you're rooting for the Red Sox or you're rooting for the Braves or whatever, it's not a good night. But you got to acknowledge it's an exciting night. Whether your team won or lost, it was amazing that it all came down to all this wacky things going on.
If I remember correctly, the home run came against a right-hand pitcher named Scott Proctor, who had pitched just about every day down the stretch. His arm was literally falling off his arm or his shoulder, and he had struggled down the stretch. They put him in because they didn't want to use any of their top relievers with the postseason coming up. And as I recall, it was Proctor who gave up that home run just inside the foul pole, as you say, down the left field line. Interesting artifact, Evan Longoria. You see some pine tar toward the end of the bat, but also a little bit toward the middle near the label as well. All right, Tom, we've got 2 more artifacts. The Toronto Blue Jays, our final team that we'll look at in the American League East. We have another bat here, and this an even more famous home run, something that Joe Carter did back in 1993.
Right. So talk about walk-off home runs. It's hard to ever talk about it without. Listen, we've already talked about Fisk's, and we've talked about the Longoria one, and now this is the bat that Joe Carter used in Game 6 of the '93 World Series to hit a walk-off World Championship winning home run against the Phillies, and so it's one of the most iconic World Series home runs. I mean, you think of Bill Mazeroski. Frankly, you think of basically probably 3. There's been more, but the big 3 are Mazeroski, Fisk, and Carter. But of course, Maz's and Carter's won the World Series. So this is the bat that he used to do that. And what I think a lot of people forget about, because you're just so focused on that moment, is earlier in the game, the Blue Jays sort of had the game in hand. They were already kind of, a lot of fans I think were thinking, oh, we're going to go to game we're gonna win it right here, because they were up 5-1. And Dave Stewart was rolling. I mean, Dave Stewart had given up 2 hits, and then in the 7th, he gave up I think a walk and a hit and a homer, the homer to Dykstra. So that gave up 3 runs, and then all of a sudden it's 5-4, and now the Jays only have a 1-run lead. And then Stewart leaves the game, and they score another 2 runs, and now the Blue Jays are down 6-5. So they had a decent lead. Things were looking good for the championship. Then it was 6-5, and then going into the 9th, and boy, maybe we're staring down at Game 7. And then Ricky Henderson gets on, Paul Molitor gets on, Carter comes up, and he hits the walk-off 3-run homer.
One thing that stands out for me on this bat, Tom, the grain. You can really see the grain marks.
Yeah.
And it's such a clean-looking bat toward the middle and toward the barrel. I mean, there's no dirt, no mud, nothing like that. It really kind of stands out among historic bats.
Yeah, I listen. I'm old school in a lot of ways, but when it comes to baseball bats, I love the natural grain. I'm not a big fan of what is really the predominant thing in baseball now, where bats have what are called full tip or whatever, where they're essentially painted. It's hard to see the wood grain. It's a wood bat. I love showing that it's a wood bat. When we go to composite bats, then we don't do whatever color you want to do. But as long as it's wood, let's show off that it's wood.
Yeah. I'm guessing that this must have come to us right after that game ended. That was 93. It was a couple of years before I started here. The late Bill Guilfoyle was our public relations director. I believe he would have traveled to the series, might have brought it back with him.
Yeah, I actually don't know off the top of my head how and when it came here, although I do believe it was soon after that World Series.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And in terms of where it is, it's Autumn Glory.
You are correct. Yes, that is correct.
On the winning track.
Way to go.
All right, very good. All right, our last artifact. This kind of jumps out at you in terms of the color, a red Blue Jays jersey. This is from Canada Day, 2017, worn by Russell Martin. What's the significance here?
Well, the significance is it's one of these many cool jerseys that we have that is unusual looking. I mean, you think of when you talk about Blue Jays, you're thinking like, what part of blue did they not understand, right? Because they went red on Canada Day, but they had been doing special Canada Day jerseys starting in 1996, actually. So they had worn special alternate jerseys to celebrate Canada Day, which is always July 1st. And this is just happening to be one from 2017. But what I love about it is it's worn by Russell Martin. And Russell Martin is a Canadian-born from right around Toronto. Actually, he's from what's called East York, which is now part of the metropolitan Toronto area. It's an important ball player. I mean, he's got more major league games caught. Of all Canadian catchers, he's got the most major league games caught by far, just easily the most. But he has actually the 4th most games played by a Canadian major leaguer. You got Larry Walker at number 1, Matt Stairs at number 2, and Joey Votto, who is still going, of course, at number 3, and then you've got Russell Martin. But here's the funny thing. I just looked this up. Obviously, I didn't know this off the top of my head. I thought, well, who is the current leader amongst Canadian players about most games played? And as mentioned, it's Joey Votto, right? Easily.
Yeah.
Joey Votto. Here's the funny thing. You'll never guess who is the 2nd most games played by a Canadian-born player. But I'll let you guess. What the heck? You're actually doing pretty well here.
Canadian-born player.
2nd most games played by an active Canadian-born player.
Oh, boy. I'm not as sharp on my current Canadian player as
right.
I should be.
Believe me, you're going to be surprised. You're going to be surprised that he's Canadian-born, probably. And secondly, you're going to be surprised at how low the number is.
Give me the team.
Plays for the Blue Jays.
Plays for the Blue Jays. Canadian-born player on the Blue Jays.
Who's I can't say it because I'll give it away if I just give this other clue. Well, I better give it to you. We don't have
young. I mean, Guerrero and Biggio and
Okay, good. I'm giving it to you. You said Guerrero. Vlad Guerrero Jr., whose dad, of course, played in Canada for a while. Vlad was born in Canada, and he has a whopping 183 games played. So it's quite a drop off between Joey Votto, who's got like 1,700 something. I don't know how many. A lot of games played, and the next most is by Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Wow, that's great.
Crazy. So there you go.
Let me guess where this one is.
Yeah.
Blue Jays locker up on the 3rd floor.
You are correct. Very good. So what was that? I think you were 7 for 10. Is that right? 6 for 10 or 7 for 10? I think you're
7 out of 10.
That's pretty good. That's excellent.
Well, on a math test, that would be like a C-. I don't know how great that is, but
but we're talking baseball. You're batting 700. That's not a C-.
Tom, we have just a couple of minutes left. We did have one question from the audience I wanted to get to. Vinny Giacinto, on the Babe Ruth crown, are there any significant markings or damages as a result of the Babe wearing the crown? Also, what is all the writing on the crown? Is that the names of the donors? I'll go back to that crown right here.
Right. So the at the bottom of the crown, so there's writing, and yes, I don't think it's all of the donors. I think it's many of the donors had their names engraved on it. There is really essentially no damage to it. The condition is incredible, and I encourage you to come to the museum, go to the 3rd floor, one for the books. When you first walk in the exhibit, you curl around to the right. There's a big section on home run records, and it's going to be right there. And there's a little diamond on the very front. You can see that at the base. There's a little diamond, and that's Ruth's initials, GHR, for George Herman Ruth. And I think it does say something about, I want to say it says something like Home Run King or something like that on it as well. But why trust me? Come on out and read it yourself.
That's right. All these artifacts, these 10 we showed from the American League East, currently on display here at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. We're going to do this again with Tom 2 weeks from now, Tuesday, January 26th. We will feature another one of these curator spotlights, and the focus will be on the National League East. And then later that day, Tom and I won't have the announcement, but the MLB Network will have the announcement of who, if anybody, is elected to the Hall of Fame. So that'll be a big day coming up on January 26th. Great stuff, Tom. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. I'm going to run off to another Zoom session. So zooming around today.
Yeah, I'm sorry I held you on a little bit too long, but
no problem.
Run along. We do appreciate it. It's great stuff, Tom. Very enjoyable. Also, I want to mention the Ford Motor Company, our new sponsor for the programs here in 2021. All of our virtual public programs made possible through the generous support of the Ford Motor Company. Our thanks to Tom Schieber. Our thanks to all of you. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.